There's a bridge in Buckeye, Arizona that stretches over the Central Arizona Project Canal. It was supposed to connect 10,000 brand new homes to the rest of the city. There's just one problem. Nobody can prove there's enough water to fill a single faucet in any of them. That was 2024. By 2026, Arizona had recorded the second largest home price decline of any state in the entire country, trailing only Florida. 13 cities across the state are now watching their aquifers drop, their land crack open, and their home values slide in ways that haven't been seen in over a decade. A Saudi-owned farm was caught draining 81% of an entire basin's groundwater to grow hay for camels overseas. A town has literally sunk 12 feet because the water underneath it is gone. Another community saw its monthly water hauling bill jump to over $1,300, nearly as much as a mortgage payment. And the state's biggest legislative response so far was a law that lets farmers sell their water rights to developers. So that should fix everything. Subscribe now, because if you're even thinking about buying property in Arizona, this might be the most important video you watch this year. Let's count them down. Before we get to the list, you need to know the one event that set all of this in motion. Arizona uses roughly 80% of its water for agriculture. The state's 5 active management areas regulate groundwater pumping in the most populated regions, but outside those zones, there are essentially no limits. Anyone with a drill and a permit can pump as much as they want, and in the desert, that math catches up with you fast. On June 1st, 2023, Governor Katie Hobbs stepped in front of cameras at the Arizona Department of Water Resources building in Phoenix and said something that every home builder in the state had been dreading. The groundwater model for the Phoenix active management area showed a projected shortfall of 4.9 million acre-feet over the next 100 years. In plain English, there isn't enough water underground to support all the new construction they've been planning. Hobbs froze new certificates of assured water supply for any subdivision relying solely on groundwater. That one announcement didn't just freeze new construction across the fastest-growing metro in America. It changed the math on every piece of dirt between Buckeye and Queen Creek overnight, and it wasn't even the first time. Pinal County, south of Phoenix, had already lost its water adequacy designation back in 2019, when state models found an 8 million acre-foot shortfall. The building freeze there had been going on for years before anyone outside Arizona was paying attention. On top of all that, Arizona absorbed a 512,000 acre-foot annual cut from the Colorado River under the Tier 1 shortage declaration. That's 18% of the state's river supply and 30% of what flows through the Central Arizona Project Canal. Former Phoenix Mayor Terry Goddard summed it up pretty bluntly when he said there's basically no more CAPI service to Pinal County agriculture. And then there's Fondomonte, a subsidiary of Saudi dairy giant Almarai. This company leased Arizona state land in La Paz County to grow alfalfa for export to the Middle East, pumping unlimited groundwater free of charge through wells that could pull 3,000 gallons per minute. State audits found that Fondomonte accounted for 81% of the Rio Negras Plain Basin's total groundwater extraction in 2023. The governor terminated their Butler Valley lease. The attorney general filed suit under public nuisance law, and by March 2024, the pumping had stopped. The damage to the aquifer, of course, was already done. The state has been scrambling to build escape valves. In June 2025, Governor Hobbs signed Senate Bill 1611, the so-called AG to Urban Law, which lets farmers in the Phoenix and Pinal management areas retire their farmland and convert groundwater rights into credits that can be sold to developers. The governor's office projected the program would conserve nearly 10 million acre-feet over its lifetime and open the door for tens of thousands of new homes. Whether that's a genuine solution or just a creative way to restart construction without actually solving the water problem depends on who you ask. And in February 2026, a Maricopa County judge threw a wrench into the entire framework, ruling that the Arizona Department of Water Resources had acted illegally when it created the 2024 Alternative Water Designation rules. If that ruling is upheld on appeal, it could dismantle the very system Arizona built to manage its way out of this crisis. That's the backdrop. Now let's meet the 13 cities caught in the middle of it. Number 13. Arizona City. This unincorporated community in Pinal County sits about an hour south of Phoenix along the I-10 corridor. right in the heart of what was supposed to be the next big growth zone between Phoenix and Tucson. Drive through Arizona City and you'll see wide desert streets lined with modest stucco homes, many of them built during the last housing boom when Pinal County was Arizona's frontier of affordable living. Median home prices here sit around $235,000, down 3.7% year over year, with homes sitting on the market for about 64 days. Arizona City is squarely inside the Pinal Active Management Area Shortage Zone, meaning developers cannot get new subdivision water certificates until the state figures out how to close that 8 million acre foot gap. For a community that was built on the promise of cheap desert home ownership, that gap is a slow-moving crisis. The homes are affordable because very few people are competing to buy them, and the water uncertainty underneath these properties makes resale value a genuine gamble. Arizona City isn't collapsing, it's just stuck, watching the Phoenix Metro grow around it while it waits for a water solution that may or may not arrive. Number 12. Douglas. Tucked against the Mexican border in Cochise County, Douglas is a small town of roughly 17,000 people that did something almost no Arizona community has done voluntarily. In November 2022, voters actually chose to create their own active management area, agreeing to regulate their own groundwater pumping before the state forced them to. The reason was obvious to anyone who lived there. Agricultural wells in the Douglas Basin had been drilled past 1,000 feet deep, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars each, and the water table was dropping steadily as large-scale farming operations pulled more and more out of the ground. Douglas doesn't have the population or the economic diversification to absorb a water crisis. It's a border town that depends on cross-border commerce, a small government workforce, and a modest base of retirees drawn by some of the cheapest housing in Arizona. The median home in Douglas sells for well under $200,000. When your deepest well starts struggling and your town votes to restrict its own growth just to survive, that tells you everything about the trajectory. Douglas made the hard choice early. Whether that foresight protects property values over the long term or simply confirms to outside buyers that this isn't a place to invest is the question nobody there wants to answer out loud. Number 11. Coolidge. About halfway between Phoenix and Tucson along the I-10 corridor, Coolidge is a Pinal County farming community that's trying to transition into a residential suburb. The town sits surrounded by cotton fields and irrigation canals that have been pulling water from underground for generations. Median home sales here hover around $293,000, down roughly 2.5% year over year. That sounds modest until you talk to the residents. Shane Leonard, the general manager of the Roosevelt Water Conservation District, and a Coolidge resident himself, described people waking up one day to find that their wells were just not pumping as much water as they had before. The wells didn't fail all at once. They just started producing less, slowly enough that by the time people noticed, the water table had already dropped significantly. Arizona Water Company has been building CAIP recharge basins near Coolidge, targeting about 2,000 acre-feet per year of underground storage. That's a real investment, and the effort shows that someone is taking the problem seriously. The question is whether 2,000 acre-feet per year can keep up with the agricultural and residential pumping that's been draining this part of the Pinal Basin for decades. The math suggests it can't, at least not on its own. Number 10. Eloy. Just south of Coolidge on I-10, Eloy sits deep inside the Pinal AMA shortage zone with home values around $276,000, down 5.9% year over year. If you've heard of Eloy at all, it's probably because the town has one of the busiest skydiving operations in the country, drawing thrill seekers from around the world to jump over the flat desert landscape. The irony of a town famous for people falling from the sky while the ground underneath it is quietly losing its water supply is the kind of thing you couldn't make up. Eloy has always been an agricultural town first, and that history is part of the problem. Decades of heavy irrigation pumping for cotton and alfalfa lowered the water table long before any housing developers showed up with master-planned community renderings. The residential growth that followed inherited an aquifer that was already stressed. And since Pinal County's water adequacy designation was pulled in 2019, new large-scale subdivision permits have been effectively frozen here. Eloy's prices aren't in freefall, but they're softening steadily in a market where buyers are starting to do something they didn't do 5 years ago, which is actually check the water situation before they write an offer. Number 9. Florence. Florence has the steepest year-over-year price decline on this entire list, and it's not even close. Home values here are around $362,000, down 11.3% in a single year. To put that in real numbers, the typical Florence home has lost roughly $46,000 in value in 12 months. And the irony is that Florence is actually better positioned on water than most of its Pinal County neighbors, because the town has been quietly stockpiling surface water and stored supply credits for years while communities around it scrambled. Florence's price drop is almost entirely market-driven, the result of high mortgage rates pushing past 6 and 7%, surging inventory across the Phoenix metro, and a post-pandemic cooldown hitting mid-priced suburbs the hardest. Still, the perception of being in a water-scarce county drags on buyer confidence, and perception in real estate might as well be reality. When a buyer sees Florence's Pinal County zip code and remembers the headline about the groundwater moratorium, they don't check whether Florence specifically has a diversified water portfolio. They just move on to the next listing in a county that isn't in the news for running dry. If you're looking at Florence, the water picture is genuinely better than the headlines suggest. The price picture is another conversation entirely. If you're finding this breakdown useful, go ahead and hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people see this video, and considering the information we're covering, that feels like a public service. Now let's keep moving, because the next few cities are where things start to escalate. Number 8. Maricopa. Not Maricopa County. Maricopa, the city. This is a critical distinction because the city of Maricopa, sitting in Pinal County just south of the Maricopa County line, is the 5th fastest growing city in the entire United States. Its population has blown past 76,000, and it's still climbing fast, with new housing tracts spreading across the desert floor south of the I-10 and I-8 junction. Home values sit around $360,000, down 8.4% year over year, with listings now sitting on the market for about 84 days. That 8% decline makes Maricopa one of the hardest hit mid-priced cities in the Phoenix metro. While the city itself has secured water for existing development and already approved lots, the areas surrounding it tell a different story. Resident Brad Gilmore watched his decades-old private well slowly lose pressure as new subdivisions popped up on every side of his property. His assessment was grim. If he sold his farm, he might clear $100,000, and that wouldn't be enough to buy anything else in the area. Gilmore's story gets at something that price charts don't capture. When a city grows faster than its water infrastructure can support, the people who were there first, the ranchers, the small farmers, the families who drilled their own wells, are the ones who end up paying the price. Their wells get outcompeted by municipal pumping, and their land values don't reflect the urban premium because they're stuck in the unincorporated zone between city and desert. Number 7. Casa Grande. The largest city in Pinal County, with a population near 69,000, Casa Grande became the face of the water moratorium's impact on development. The Villago master-planned community, which was supposed to bring thousands of new homes to the area, was frozen in its tracks when Pinal County lost its water adequacy designation in 2019. Developer Mike Kern watched years of planning stall overnight. Home prices here sit around $329,000, roughly flat year over year, which sounds stable until you realize that developers have been finding creative workarounds. Roughly 700 build-to-rent units were permitted in the Casa Grande area because rental properties aren't classified as subdivisions and therefore don't need the same water certificates. If you're wondering whether that's a loophole or a long-term strategy, the answer probably depends on whether you're the developer or the person living next to a rental community built on a technicality. The good news is that in March 2026, Arizona Water Company received Pinal County's first alternative designation of assured water supply, which the governor's office says could eventually support over 80,000 new homes. Whether that solves the problem or just delays it is still an open question. Number 6, Lake Havasu City. This one is different from the others on the list, and that difference matters. Lake Havasu City sits on the Colorado River in Mojave County, which means it is not in a groundwater crisis. The city draws its water directly from the river, and while Colorado River allocations are getting tighter across the entire American West, Lake Havasu still has reliable surface water access. So why is it on this list? Because the real estate numbers are brutal. Home values here are around $466,000, down 7.5% year over year. National data from Adams showed Lake Havasu's metro area recorded the second steepest home price decline among more than 150 metro areas nationwide, trailing only Cape Coral, Florida. That's not a water story. That's a market correction. Lake Havasu is a retirement and second home market that overheated during the pandemic when remote workers and early retirees poured into affordable Sunbelt towns with waterfront access and year-round sunshine. Prices shot up, and now buyers are pulling back as mortgage rates bite and inventory piles up on the market. Homes that were selling in 48 hours during the pandemic frenzy are now sitting for months. The lesson here isn't about water. It's about what happens when a small desert city prices itself like it's Scottsdale without the economy, the job market, or the cultural infrastructure to back it up. When the tide goes out, Lake Havasu is finding out who is swimming without shorts. Number 5, Kingman. Kingman sits atop the Hualapai Valley Basin in Mojave County, and the story here is one of the most infuriating on this list. The basin runs an annual deficit of roughly 50,000 acre-feet, meaning far more water is being pumped out than nature puts back in. And in the desert, nature doesn't put back much. How did it get this bad? In the years before, the state designated Hualapai Valley as an irrigation non-expansion area. In 2022, nearly 200 agricultural wells were approved as out-of-state investors, fled stricter water regulations in California and Nevada, and set up farming operations in a part of Arizona with 0 pumping limits. They saw the regulatory gap and they drove right through it. Picture this. Investors from states with tight water laws buying cheap Arizona land, drilling deep wells, and pumping unlimited groundwater to grow crops in the desert, all while the people of Kingman watch their own water future drain away. Mojave County and the city of Kingman spent over $400,000 commissioning a USGS study just to document what was happening underneath their feet, plus another $953,000 on monitoring wells to track the decline in real time. The state's own forecast projects average well depths in the Kingman subbasin dropping below 1,200 feet over the coming decades. Home prices here vary depending on your source, with Zillow showing roughly a 6% decline, while Redfin actually showed a modest increase, which tells you more about the chaos in Arizona's mid-tier real estate data than it does about Kingman's actual trajectory. Number 4, Queen Creek. Named alongside Buckeye as one of the 2 cities most directly impacted by the 2023 moratorium, Queen Creek sits at the eastern edge of the Phoenix metro in Maricopa County. Home values here are around $624,000, down 7.4% year over year, with homes taking about 89 days to sell. That's a $600,000 home, losing over $46,000 in value in a single year while sitting on the market for nearly 3 months. Queen Creek's population grew 29% in a single recent year, making it the fastest-growing community in the entire Phoenix metro. That kind of growth in a city flagged for groundwater inadequacy is the definition of an unsustainable trajectory. To its credit, Queen Creek moved fast. The city secured approval from the Arizona Department of Water Resources to transport 5,000 acre-feet per year from the Harquahala Irrigation Non-Expansion Area, with rights stretching 110 years into the future. That's a real long-term play. Whether it's enough to keep pace with the growth rate is another question, because Queen Creek isn't slowing down. Developers are still building, buyers are still coming, and the gap between water supply and water demand is the kind of math that gets harder every year. This video is changing how you think about Arizona real estate. Hit subscribe. We cover stories like this every single week, and the next one might be about the state you're actually planning to move to. Number 3. Rio Verde Foothills. This unincorporated community northeast of Scottsdale became the national poster child for Arizona's water crisis, and the story is worth telling in full. For years, 500 to 700 homes in Rio Verde Foothills relied on water hauled in by truck from the city of Scottsdale. These weren't mobile homes or shacks. These were $400,000 to $1 million properties on 1-acre desert lots, served by a water delivery system that worked fine until it didn't. On January 1st, 2023, Scottsdale cut off the supply. Overnight, residents were scrambling. Cody Rhyme, a homeowner in the community, watched his monthly water bill climb from $380 toward a projected $1,340, nearly the cost of his mortgage. Realtor Rebecca Schwegler reported about 75 listings canceled or expired in 6 months, with sellers slashing prices by tens of thousands. The housing market in Rio Verde Foothills effectively froze. After months of emergency legislation, temporary water agreements, and public hearings, the Arizona Corporation Commission approved EPCOR as a permanent water provider in late 2023. EPCOR's permanent standpipe opened on January 1st, 2026, supplied by long-term storage credits and Verde River agreements. The acute crisis is over, buyer confidence is returning, and the market is slowly thawing. Rio Verde survived, just barely. Number 2. Buckeye. Buckeye is one of the fastest-growing cities in America, with a population of about 119,000 and new arrivals showing up every single day. It also relies almost entirely on groundwater. When the 2023 moratorium hit, Buckeye took the biggest punch. The Hasayampa sub-basin model found the area 15% short of the 100-year water adequacy requirement, and the state stopped issuing new certificates. The most visible casualty was North Star Ranch, a planned development of 9,668 homes that received city approval in a 6-to-1 vote in February 2024, without an assured water supply certificate. The Bridge to Nowhere, a span built over the Central Arizona Project Canal to connect the development to the rest of Buckeye, became a national symbol of what happens when growth outpaces resources. The bridge sits there, fully constructed, leading to a sea of empty desert where a neighborhood is supposed to be but can't start because the water math doesn't work. Buckeye is fighting back. The city purchased a parcel in the Harquahala Valley with rights to nearly 6,000 acre-feet per year for 110 years, and officials have even floated a roughly $5 billion desalination pipeline from the Sea of Cortez. Existing homes and already certified lots still have 20 to 25 years of secured water, and Buckeye remains one of the most affordable entry points in the Phoenix metro, with over a quarter of recent sales under $400,000. This is a city that's simultaneously booming and running on borrowed time. And which side of that equation wins depends entirely on whether the water solutions arrive before the growth does. Number 1. Wilcox. If every other city on this list is a warning, Wilcox is what happens when the warning gets ignored for decades. This small town in the Wilcox Basin of Cocos County sits on top of what used to be one of Arizona's most productive aquifers. In some parts of the basin, the water table has dropped more than 400 feet. The Arizona Department of Water Resources confirmed that in the last 10 years alone, at least 71 wells have gone completely dry. The land itself is collapsing. Subsidence around Wilcox has exceeded 11 feet, with satellite research from Texas A&M showing some areas sinking at rates of up to 6 inches per year. The ground has ripped open more than 50 miles of earth fissures, massive cracks in the desert floor that can swallow roads, damage foundations, and rupture utility lines. These aren't theoretical risks, they're visible from the air. The annual overdraft in the Wilcox Basin exceeds 100,000 acre-feet, and agricultural wells now drill past 1,000 feet, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars each. Residents report wells going dry and resorting to water hauling, the same emergency that crippled Rio Verde Foothills, except without the million-dollar homes or the political leverage to force a solution. In December 2024, Governor Hobbs designated Wilcox as Arizona's 7th active management area, the first ever created by director action rather than a public vote. It was a recognition that the crisis had passed the point where voluntary cooperation could fix it. Wilcox is what happens when you pump water faster than the planet can replace it, in a place where the planet was never replacing it very fast to begin with. The land is sinking, the wells are failing, and the fissures keep spreading. The real question about Arizona isn't whether these cities can find more water. Engineers and legislators are working on that, from Buckeye's $5 billion desalination pipeline proposal to the AG to urban water transfer law to recycled wastewater systems that cities like Scottsdale and Tucson have been expanding for years. The state isn't sitting still, but the real question is whether the fixes can arrive fast enough, because the market isn't patient. The 2007 Colorado River Interim Guidelines expire at the end of 2026, and as of early this year, the 7 basin states still haven't agreed on what comes next. Every proposed alternative in the federal draft environmental impact statement would reduce Arizona's allocation even further. And while politicians negotiate timelines, regular people are making real decisions about where to buy homes, where to retire, and where to invest their life savings. Water can be piped, desalinated, and legislated. Buyer confidence, once it evaporates in the Arizona heat, is a lot harder to pump back. If this video changed how you think about buying property in the desert, hit subscribe. We'll see you in the next one. We'll see you in